Hello, good people of YouTube. Sealord here, and today we're going over 5 premium ships that I recommend you guys avoid like the plague. These are 5 premium ships that are not worth the time, money, or whatever you gotta put into the game in order to get these ships. If they are resource ships or if they are just outright premium ships, I would recommend passing on these ships. Either they've aged very poorly or, well, some of these ships just weren't that great to start out with in the first place. If you do find this video informational, entertaining, or just downright enjoy it, make sure to drop a like and leave a comment and share the video. Helps out on the YouTube side of things quite a bit. Also, real quick, if you're a fan of just goofy chaos, check out yesterday's video, second installment in the American Truck Simulator series that we've been doing. It's a game I picked up a few weeks ago. I'm having a blast in it, and I think it translates really well into the video. So I'm going to play a quick clip from that. If you're interested in that, you can check out the link that'll pop up. If not, just skip forward a bit. You'll be right into the list.
Mount just casually by.
Whoa! Okay.
Oh, what are you doing? Wake up, everybody! It's time to go to work.
That lithium isn't going to mine itself, children.
The light is red. The light is red.
What happened?
Sounds like a
Whoa! Okay. So with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get on into it with number 5, which is the Tier 8 Premium British battleship, the Vanguard. This one hurts for me to say because I really liked the Vanguard when she was released originally. She's the last battleship to be complete. You can argue in the comments about the Jean Bar, but I'm talking about her keel was laid down after the Jean Bar, so it's the latest designed and completed battleship. You know, it's the last big gun ship to ever be designed and commissioned. And I was so excited to see this ship get added to the game, the end of an era. And you'd think, okay, it's the last battleship, or most technologically last advanced battleship ever built. So clearly the gun should be accurate. And they did reflect some of that in the ship's maneuverability. This is still a very highly mobile battleship for what it is. But the guns aren't that great. The armor's not that great. But back in the day, you could get by playing her like a very large, heavy cruiser, which is what I played her like. However, with the addition of more and more big gun battleships at Tier 10, and again, the general direction that the game's gone to where engagement ranges are being pushed further and further out, unfortunately, the Vanguard, it's just not really what she once was. And she doesn't really have a lot going for her. She doesn't have many consumables beyond the basic repair and damage con. Well, doesn't have anything beyond that. And it's just sad to see where the ship's at today. I really enjoyed this ship back in the day. She has 8 15-inch guns, which also, of course, doesn't help out her case any. Because, again, they're not that accurate. And they're 15-inch guns. You know, if they were 16-inch... obviously that would be different, but of course the ship in real life didn't have 16-inch guns. So it's just such an unfortunate, sad state for a ship that I enjoyed for quite some time, and a historical ship. It really hurts when it's a historical ship that always either ages very poorly or just comes out and is a bit of a flop in this game. But yep, if you ever have the opportunity to pick up the Vanguard, unless you're just a history buff, I unfortunately would not recommend her anymore. Alright, going on down to number 4, we have the Tier 9 American destroyer, the Halford, the American hybrid destroyer, I should say. So the Halford's a relatively new premium in the game, and she's the latest of the hybrid monstrosities. Now, the Halford is, like I said in my review, if you want an in-depth review of the Halford and of any of these ships, I have reviews of all these ships up on the channel. It's basically a situation where she gets the basic treatment of, we wanted to do both a hybrid ship and a Fletcher class, but she got the short end of both, right? So she has one less turret than the other than the standard Fletcher, I should say. I think there's 6 Fletchers in the game now. Now, typically when this happens, like with the Velos, they give the ship a bit of a reload buff because, well, the Fletcher's power comes from her 5 guns with a good reload time. The Halford gets one less gun, but she gets the base reload time of the Fletcher. So now with a good reload time on 5 guns, you have a decent reload time on 4 guns. Compare that to other Tier 9 destroyers, and now you're losing some gunpowder, especially compared to the more gunboaty destroyers. And the planes aren't that great either. They are the rocket planes. They are a little frail, and it just comes out to be a giant pile of meh. You have a Fletcher that doesn't have a full gunpowder. Give him a turret and AA for a catapult on the ship, with planes that, sure, if you find like a battleship or a heavy cruiser that's just hugging an island, yeah, you can annoy them, and you only have one rack of torpedoes as well. So it's just a giant boat of meh, in my opinion, and not really worth it. If you want to get a Fletcher, either get the Fletcher or get the Kid. The Kid's the much better Fletcher, comparing the Kid to the Halford, and the Kid will walk all over the Halford too in a gunfight. And, well, of course, the normal Fletcher would. Any of the Fletchers would walk over the Halford in a gunfight, especially the Velos. The Velos is more of the gunboaty side of things, because she has, again, one less turret, but a much better reload because of that. So the Halford's a premium that they just try to do too much with, in my opinion, and wound up making it a meh hybrid and a meh DD. Because, again, too, like, you gotta fly the planes, right? So why would you do this to a DD? The class where you have to be the most attentive, and it involves the most active play style. Like battleships, I could get hybrid battleships. Battleships generally hang at mid to long range, so they can, you know, use their aircraft, but they still have their guns with long range and, well, decent accuracy on some of them to get what they need to get done. Cruisers, I could see that too, like a heavy cruiser, because again, heavy cruisers typically play at medium range. But like a destroyer, again, one of the most active gameplay styles, and you want to give it a mechanic where you have to basically let it sit there for a minute or two while you go around and fly your aircraft. So it really just doesn't make sense, in my opinion, and I don't know. If they go forward with more hybrid DDs in the future, I think they're going to be pretty miserable too, but I guess we shall see. So yep, Halford, don't pick it up. Get a Velos or a Kid instead if you want a premium Fletcher. Going down to number 3, we have the British heavy cruiser, the Nottingham. Now the Nottingham is weird. So obviously beyond the design being very strange, I'm not actually a terrible detractor of this design. I think this design's neat. It has a reason. Naval Treaty came out. Ship designs had to accommodate the naval treaties. You stick all the guns in one place, heavily armor that one place. The rest of the ship can get no armor. It saves on the tonnage. You know, again, interesting historical detail there. But when it comes to the gameplay, so the Nottingham is a British cruiser. British cruisers, both the heavy and the light line, aren't the best well armored. You can see they just basically stand up out of the water. Their armor is very light. They're easy to citadel. Any battleship player should know that. They offset this by, with the light cruisers, getting smokescreen, the option to take smokescreen. With the heavy cruisers, they get an improved heal, to where when they do eat damage, they can repair a good chunk of it back. But with the Nottingham, she gets neither. She gets the British short smoke DD smoke, which means that it's really only there to disengage from the action, which means that you're really going to be firing your guns most of the time from the open water. So you would think they would give it maybe a small heal, since it does have the short burst smoke that the British destroyers have. No, it doesn't. It doesn't get any heal whatsoever. Has, again, stereotypical British cruiser armor, to where a misguided, well, not even a misguided shell, a shell that you might have thought you would dodge. Like, let's say you dodge the bulk of the battleship shells coming at you, the initial tight grouping, but then that one shell that always goes a little bit too far to the left or to the right or up or down, that one vibe checks your citadel for, you know, half of your ship's HP, as does happen with British cruisers. You can't do anything about that. You can't even heal just a little bit of that HP back. It's gone. So, yeah, it's a very frustrating ship to play because of that. And the smoke, again, you really only use it when you're disengaging. You're going to be, you know, firing from the open water. And with the turret layout, obviously, as much as I do like the, you know, the historical aspect of the design, when you're running all over the place, you ain't got no guns in the back. So you got to constantly try to get all 3 of your main turrets in the front to fire, which means you're showing more of your ship than you would like to the enemy team, which again leads to you getting vibe checked by battleships. Now, of course, there are players that can make it work, but for a ship you're going to be spending, you know, $48, $52 on American dollars, there are much better tier 8 premiums to pick from, in my opinion. So, yes, pass on the Nottingham. Going down to number 2, we have the tier 9 Italian battleship, the Guiseppe Verdi. This ship was interesting when she was released. Now, unlike the Legends version of the game, in the PC version, the Italian battleships do not have SAP secondaries. They have normal HE, and most of the secondaries on Italian battleships are these puny 90mm guns that can barely pin destroyer armor. But you give them the SAP munition, and now we're talking. So the Guiseppe Verdi it's the Marco Polo, but it has SAP secondaries basically, and slightly more accurate main battery guns, slightly more accurate. So when this ship was announced, I was like, okay, cool, we're going to get to see what those 90mm secondaries can do when they have SAP. Surely this will be pretty good. And turns out when you are in secondary range, yeah, they're pretty good. They'll rip through cruisers and destroyers quite easily, and then the bigger secondaries will hurt battleships quite well. But the issue was, even back then, she only had a 10.6 kilometer secondary range, a full kilometer and change shorter than your average tier 9 secondary battleships range. Most secondary battleships at tier 9, it's at least 11.5. So you're a full kilometer shorter, and you don't think a kilometer would make that much difference, especially when it comes to secondary guns, but it really does. That's that much less time that they're in your secondary range for your secondaries to chew on them, and that's that much closer you have to either bait them or get into them in order for your secondaries to start firing off. Now, this is compensated for by the fact that the thing does have exhaust smoke, and it still works today where, true enough, there are players that will ignore a battleship-sized smoke screen just, you know, jogging along to them at 30 knots. You know, it still does happen, but it happens so little nowadays. And of course, too, since the Giuseppe Verdi has been released, there's been a constant influx of radar cruisers at higher tier. We just got the Pan American light cruisers that, you know, they all have radar at higher tier now, right? And again, the fact that it's a 10.6 kilometer secondary range, and again, engagement ranges at higher tier have been being pushed further and further back, it's just not really there. And then the main guns too, I did say they were more accurate than Marco Polo's guns, but that wasn't saying too much. So when you are stuck in a situation like the match in the background where you're stuck in the back for a good portion of the game, you have very frustrating main battery accuracy, your main gimmicks and your secondaries, and you can't use it for most of the game. And then when you do finally get up to secondary range, you pop your smoke, unless there's no radar ships around. Yeah. It's an unfortunate situation, but one that the ship wasn't in that strong of a place to start off with, but you could make it happen every now and then back in the day. And true enough, today you can make it happen. But again, if you want a secondary ship at tier 9, I know SAP's a cool mechanic, but like, just get the Pomeran. Moving on down to number 1, we have the one, the only, the Sun Yat-Sen, the Pan-Asian battleship. Well, this ship just sucks. Oh man, take a Soyuz, give it 457s. You might be thinking, well, Sealord's got 457s, right? Yeah, true. But they have the same alpha as the Vladivostok guns. You have an 18-inch shell that has the same max damage as a 16-inch shell. Now, while it's true that, sure, you got the same alpha as a 16-inch shell, but you get the pinning power of an 18-inch shell. That is true. You can overmatch 30mm, so against some cruisers and such, sure, absolutely, and battle cruisers and such too. Well, battle cruisers, they all have like 25mm of armor, so 16-inch will go right through anyway, but you can overmatch 30 with the alpha of 16. So I can see what they were trying to do there, but in practice, it don't work, Chief. It's just misery. So you got 6 guns, and you're kind of stuck with dual gun syndrome. Dual gun syndrome is where the shells from turrets that have 2 guns per turret rather than 3 guns per turret, they seem to fly further apart than the triple gun turrets does. Now that might just be, of course, like perspective because you're firing 2 instead of 3 shells, sure, but it's still frustrating either way, you know. And you only have 4 guns in the front, and by tier 9 standards, that's not that great. Keep in mind, these shells have the alpha of 16-inch guns. So, really, you have 4 16-inch guns in the front. That's incredibly frustrating. Now, the hull itself is tanky. It is a Soyuz hull, right? So, sure, you get in close, you're face tanking a lot of damage, but then when it's your turn to do damage, you only have 4 guns that do the alpha of 16-inch guns. So, yeah, it's pretty miserable in my experience, and they're not that accurate. Now, don't get me wrong, when they connect, and you're doing the damage of a 16-inch gun. You see what I'm saying? Like, you got 6 guns, they're really 16-inch guns. They could just overmatch 30 millimeters of armor. So in a couple of situations where you run into some heavy cruisers that you normally wouldn't be able to pin with a 16-inch gun, yes, it is better. But in every other situation, from my experience, it's just a miserable experience. An alpha buff to make it at least, you know, more damaging than a 16-inch shell would be nice for the Sun Yat-Sen. But other than that, don't get the ship, guys. Just grind out the Soyuz, you know, the ship that's just better. Alright guys, so that's my top 5 ships to avoid like the plague. Let me know in the comments down below what you think, and add to this list your ships that you would suggest players avoid like the plague. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Have a wonderful Monday. Have a wonderful rest of your week. If you did enjoy, make sure to drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. Again, I hope you guys have a wonderful Monday and the rest of your week. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.